Okay, so today we're going to work on the Gradient Mesh tool, and we'll start off by showing you what the common way to go about doing the Gradient Mesh tool would be. Gradient Mesh essentially is done so that you can come up with gradients that don't conform to vertical, horizontal configuration as you'd get with a gradient. Like you see over in the gradient tool, you've got either a linear or a radial gradient, but they're pretty uniform in their execution. You can drag them on 45 degrees, but you're always going to get a straight transition that goes from white to gray or whatever color choice you choose. Same thing is going to go for the radial as well. You can move this stuff, but you're pretty limited in what you can do with this particular option for gradation. The other gradation you got in Illustrator would be blending. And so I'm going to go and change this to CMYK, and wow, CMYK, and choose a color here with no stroke. And then I will create a different color, X, to toggle between these two. Let's go to blue. Let's go and modify this with the pencil tool. And then I'm going to go from this to this. Command Option B is the quick key. This is a smooth blend. If you hit Command Y, you're going to see that it's this star. This is the spine that links this shape, this vector shape, to this vector shape, and it transitions from orange to blue. Now if you look, you see this blue striation in the foreground where it's blending from one anchor point to another anchor point. That indicates that this is in the front. So if I go to Object, Blend, Reverse Front to Back, now you see that this has been put to the front and that's now in the back. Object, Blend. I did the quick keys, which was Command Option B. And so if you want to go and modify this, you can go to your Blend Options. Blend Options. You have to set this up. So specified steps. So it was set to smooth color, and the smooth interpretation that it made was it was going to require 201 steps, meaning to transition from an orange star to this blue kind of a star, you're going to go 201 replications for it to evolve from this to this. If you go to specified steps, you can go to 5 steps, which would mean 1, 2, and then 5 steps to transition in between. And that's essentially what a blend does. Now, you can do something like modify the spine with the pencil tool, and it's a live exchange. I can grab this and move this around. I can move this around. I can change the color on this. But what I can't do is, if you hit Command Y again, is I can't doctor any of the ones in between. If you want these shapes, I would go to Object, Blend, and then Expand. And Expand is going to give you all the vector information. So that's pretty nice, but it's not as it's not going to allow you to come up with the degree of realism and as efficient a way as you're going to be able to do it with the Gradient Mesh. So Gradient Mesh has got a black fill with a black stroke. I'm going to go and make this a color that I can see. And I'm going to get rid of some of these colors that are these palettes that are unnecessary for this. And I'm going to show you first the hard way, and then I'll show you the easier way in a moment. So I'm dragging a copy over here. And I'm going to go with my Gradient Mesh under Object. Well, I need to select this first, and then I go to Object, Create Gradient Mesh. And what you see here in this Create Gradient Mesh palette is rows and columns. And if I hit Preview, you're going to see you've got 4 rows, 1, 2, 3, 4 columns. A flat appearance, meaning that the color you choose there is going to be flat. Highlight is going to be 100%. I leave it at that. And the reason why I do that is because, frankly, I don't want the computer to dictate to me what's going to happen with my visual. I want to make it happen. Okay, so I select this with my selection tool. And what this looks like, it looks like a net that's been thrown over the subject. And what you can do with your white arrow is click on these. And now this anchor point has been selected just the same as, it works just the same as with your pen tool, except this one's got 4 anchor points that are assigned to it due to the intersection of these two vertices. Okay, you can shorten the handles, you can elongate the handles, etc. But the real reason for utilizing this tool is I'm going to go dark to light, and I'll show you what you can do. I click on an anchor point, letter I for the eyedropper tool, and I'll sample from over here, and you can see it's as if I spilled some sort of a color, the red that I chose here, and I spilled it on this anchor point. And if you want, you can go and, well, this right here means that this is out of gamut, meaning that this won't print. It might show up on RGB for web use, but it's not going to show for print. So I'm going to go and saturate, come up with a red, and I'm liking that. I'll take the black out of it. And to illustrate the point, I can go and draw this back, and I can push this forward. This anchor point has got that deep dark burgundy, almost black, that's assigned to this anchor point, and I can affect what's going on with this anchor point by pulling this handle, thus creating this influence of this dark burgundy in this region over here. So I'll pull this back, pull this forward. I can do the same thing here and encroach upon it. But you can see how weird this the gradient mesh is behaving when I do these kind of things. Okay, and you're getting hard edges and stuff. So this is the hard way to go about doing it. But just to further illustrate how you go about doing this, eyedropper tool, you can go and sample from within the gradient mesh. I can go and hit this color and carry it across. If I want to select multiple anchor points, I'll hit the Shift key. I can get my magic or my lasso here. And with the lasso, I can go and pick around anchor points, and then I can assign color. Whereas if I were doing it with the black direct selection, I can go and marquee an area, but it selects everything. With the white direct selection tool, however, I can go do this, and I'm pretty much limited to my selections based on the marquee available or the marquee selection. Whereas with this, I can go and get in between things and go around, and I have more control over my selections. Okay, so that's one way to go about doing it, but you saw some of the limitations of that. You could end up with some of these anchor points with the gradient mesh twisting up and creating hard edges, which is kind of difficult. In some instances, the simpler the shape actually, the simpler the shape, the more it's going to behave. If you're doing something like the neck of a bottle, however, that can be problematic. Command C, Command F, Reflect tool, Rotation tool, remember that? Click on this, Shift key, flip it, move it in, grab these two, they're overlapped so I can pathfinder them together with the first one. And now if I go with my Gradient Mesh tool, which is located down here, I can go and I can click on this, I can click on this, and I need more detail perhaps, and I need some over here. This is what I was looking for. The Gradient Mesh breaks out of the contour of the shape, and if you go and try to colorize this, you're going to run into problems. It becomes very difficult, and you get some weird color transitions that happen like this. So my advice to you is not to do it this way with complicated shapes. With experience, you're going to understand what you can get away with. This, you might almost be able to get away with it. But I prefer to do it this way because I know that you work with rectangles, the gradient mesh is a lot better when you don't have all of the edges to deal with. See how well ordered that is? And I'm going to go and marquee select this, Shift, click on this, and then right click to arrange this and bring this shape to the front. I selected the picture by mistake. Okay, so it's again what I preach. I should practice. So there's that. Create a new layer. Double click on this one, name it image. And would hit OK to that. If I hit Command A and then I hit Shift on that and click on it, it deselects the image, but everything else needs to go to the layer above. And then I can lock my image and I can double click and dim it if I need to, etc. Alright, so now what I want to do is I just want to marquee this area, Shift, click on the gradient mesh, right click, arrange, bring this to the front. Let's color it differently so that I can see what I'm up to. Now when I do a clipping mask, meaning this shape is in the front, Shift, click on this, Object, clipping mask make, or as you can see here it's Command 7. And when you do that, the mask shape gives up all of its color properties and adopts those of the color of the shape that's going within. And if I click on this, you can see I've got a nice mesh that's nice and orderly. But what's difficult is if I try to go and marquee this, I marquee the contour edge, the mask actually, and the mesh itself, and I don't want that. So I'm going to go and click on the contour by itself and then lock it so I don't have to deal with it. Lock selection. Now I'll go and I'll marquee this whole thing and I'll eyedropper, letter I, the darkest dark. And then I'm going to go in here and marquee this area right here and sample some color like this and move it around and modify this so that I can get this to happen. And this is going to allow you the maximum degree of flexibility. Okay? And you can move these and twist them around and you don't have any problems because it's all within that mask shape. Okay? Then you got the oval here. And I will create the oval here and I can grab this and I can, grab this oval and I can drag it and drop it on top. I drag a copy. And sample this color, but you have to have that selected. Sample that color and move it on top. So this needs a little bit of work. I mean, that's no big issue though because we got the gradient mesh. I can grab this, move this down, sample from this, shift click. You know, I should move this up here and I'll go and just modify this a little bit more. Sample from within so I get gradual transitions of color. And then I can drag this and drop this on top. And with my pencil tool, I can go and modify the contour if I feel it's necessary. I mean, it is a candle. It doesn't have to be perfect. In fact, we don't want it to be perfect. I mean, you guys have been there where you've picked up a warm candle and you pinch it and it's malleable because of the fact that it's been heated. So an imperfect kind of a situation is probably optimal for this. Go and grab this circle, drag and drop this on top, sample the color. I can do a gradient mesh on this as well with the gradient mesh tool. Look for that plus sign to show up. That means you can click and make some color selections. Now if I click in the inside of these anchor points, I clicked in that area right there, that's called a field, and all 4 anchor points will be affected by that selection. So you can see what's happening there. And again, don't feel shy about moving these things and moving the handles. This is offering you a lot of flexibility to go in here and manipulate this stuff. So you can see what's happening there. And the other thing I want to do is I want to go in here with my pencil tool and I'm going to go and draw shapes like this. Option key, when you draw with the pencil tool, you want to close your shape. So when you conclude, hit your Option key, you can close it, and then I can sample this color and grab it and drag it into position over here. And then in order to soften this up, there's 2 things you can do. You can go with transparency, so you can allow some of the color from underneath to infiltrate, soften that effect. But you can also go to Effect, go to blur, and you can go to Gaussian blur, and you can see what's going to happen to the edge. I can zoom away to get a better idea, or I can zoom in. I can push the radius of pixels so that it's going to really just soften that edge for me. And black arrow, I get the bounding box. I can stretch this a little bit. Then I can go in and layer with another area of color. Drag and drop that right over here. Again, it's got a bounding box. I can pinch it if necessary. Arrow key it into position. I want to make a tint of it. Hit the shift key and I can slide this up a little bit. That needs to be a little bit tighter. Arrow key it back up. And you can start to see how it's coming together. This ellipse, I'm going to start off with a dark color, and maybe I'll just do a straight gradient on this. So grab this, drag it over onto the red, or onto the black, and here, sample this color, drag it and drop it there. But I don't want a radial, I want a linear. And then this is week 1 stuff. Gradient, you can see that's the higher value of this orangey red. I want it to go this way, however, and I want it to go from light at the top to dark in the bottom, so that it can simulate the whole idea of this being recessed. This side over here I want to work with a little bit now. Oops, I selected the whole thing. So I'm going to go and modify this one as well. Get my pencil tool, contour the edge a little bit differently. Will it let me do it? No, because this is a pretty complicated shape. So in order to do it with my wide direct selection tool is the only way it's going to happen. So I can go in here and move these anchor points if I feel I need to do this. Move these into position. Move the handles around, etc. But what's really nice about this is if you were working with something, say like Chrome, where you've got bends and turns, and you can really do a great job with rendering that in a realistic way. Now, if you learn how to do realistic imagery in Illustrator, it's my thought that you're going to have the skill level technically to be able to execute a nicely constructed logo, or you'll understand the maximum limits of the program so that you know what your options are in terms of when you've got a design assignment. So I need a little bit more information in here, so I'm going to click there, and then I'll sample in there, and then I can make subtle choices about my color. And you can see how it's starting to resemble this candle. And again, go in here and draw some textural shapes and drop those on top and do what I was showing you earlier, and that is to go in here with gradient, or not gradient mesh, but with Gaussian blur after you've drawn these shapes, a little bit of transparency so that they don't look like hard shapes that have been dropped on top. And it's a nice little process. I'll leave it at that. Next video is going to be how to construct the candle flame.